Good evening, everyone. So, this is the second night of the Zulia. I don't remember the name of it, bag. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Catherine, and I like to say I'm the owner, founder, and curator of Sew Your Bag, which is a subscription box for beginner and aspiring bag makers. So, hey, Miss Varna. I'm doing well. I'm doing well, Varna. Um, so before we get started, I was gonna ask you, Vaughn. I was gonna say, is Vaughn gonna make it, or is it dinner time? I'm losing track of time right about now. It's 1 hour, 2 hours for Colorado, I think. So I hope I got that right. But I think you're 1 hour. So before I get started, I want to make sure that everybody has the pieces that they need to do day two. Today is going to be a little bit more prep because I realized that in the first part I did not cover with you your strap. It's dinner time. I won't say who will have to wait, but I hope he doesn't get hangry. Like when I get hungry, I get hangry. So I was like, ugh, I need to eat something. Real quick, I'll just eat anything. Real quick, just something to tide me over for a little while. So I realized, like I said yesterday, I didn't do the prep for the straps and I didn't explain to you. I sort of glossed over it a little bit. I did say to you that you do not need to interface the key fob. So I will go over that with you today as well. So I'll talk about the straps. We're going to be doing the channel for our bag. So this is the channel portion. We're going to be doing that. Once again, that comes in three parts. We're going to do the handle, we'll do the front, the back, and the bottom. So I was very surprised last night when I moved very quickly through this. So let's see how we do tonight. Usually the third night is the longest because it's the lining, which has a couple of more intricate pieces. And then we also then have to put everything together. But we'll just go with it for now. So let's take a look at the things that you're going to need. I am going to clear off my cutting mat here just a little bit. And so let's go through this. So this is going to be for the key fob. And as I mentioned, the key fob does not need to be interfaced. So if you cut that out, there is no interfacing. I'll go through the strap portion. So this is the strap. I folded one piece already. I will fold the next one, but I also stuck a piece of DLH 2010 in here. You can put Decoville Light if that's what you have because you had it for the bag. I just used the DLH 2010. It's about the same weight. And I'll do one of these for you so that you can see it. So you're going to need two of those. You're going to need the bottom portion of your strap. And as I mentioned, there is an accent. It is considered an accented strap because you have the fabric on the top. And then if you hold it straight up, you can sort of see the vinyl peeking through on the side. So I'm going to need my vinyl for that, for the bottom part. Now, when it comes to the part that's going to be covering the tube, you're going to need two centers, and then you're going to need four pieces that are left and right. So it's two for the left and two for the right, and you'll need that. You're going to need your bottom, and your bottom, I explained yesterday, should be interfaced with Decoville Light. So I use the DLH 2010 first, and then the Decoville Light. Just so that you know, when I put this on, I actually marked the center at the top and the bottom. And then I folded my piece of Decoville Light in half and I just lined up those center marks, which is how I got it to be in the center. You can measure it with a ruler, but that was the easiest way to do it. And then last but not least, you're going to need your front and your back. If this is directional fabric, I hope that you cut it in the right direction. Mine is sort of random fabric. I do know, however, that I want this piece to be my front because it has that peak that goes just like that. I know I'm going to fold it under a little bit, but I still wanted that to be the front and this to be the back. It's not upside down because that peak is upside down. I did cut them in the same direction. It's just that the fabric works that way. So those are the pieces you're going to need. So for anybody who's following along with me in the pattern, I am on page I am on page 9, which is the key fob and the prepping for that. So I'm going to set all of these to the side, and I'm going to very quickly prep my key fob. We will be using the key fob for the lining, but I want to do all of that sewing that I need to do that's kind of strap related at one time. So I will be getting my ironing board, and this is very easy. It's just, we're just going to fold it in half once, fold to the center, fold to the center, and then fold in half again. And then we're going to attach a D-ring. So lengthwise, I'm folding it to the other long edge. Make sure you know what's the front and the back. This is on Cara, so I just look for the brightest side. If there's no obvious front or back, I look at where the coloring is the brightest. So I'm going to just put that on there, iron it in half. Then I'm going to open it up. I'm going to fold the long edge to the middle. And this is very hot. Just like that. And then I'm going to grab the other side and fold that to the middle as well. So both of those pieces are getting, long edges are getting folded to the middle. And then once I've done that, I am going to fold it in half one more time. And I'm matching these edges here on the side. So those are folded edges. And I'm matching those. And the reason I'm holding it so gingerly is because it's very hot. And I just want to make sure they match. All right. So that's going to be it. I am going to put clips on this because I want to go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew this at the same time that I am sewing my strap. So I'm just going to put a couple of clips on here to hold it together. Okay. So that will be that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is going to be your actual, I believe it's your straps. So the strap piecing, I'm going to do similar, and I'll show you what I did, except I'm not going to fold it in half. And the reason I don't fold the strap in half is because I don't want any kind of permanent crease going down the middle. So I do have you take your strap piece, and I have you mark lines on either side, and then you're going to fold it to the middle. The other thing you can do is just mark a line in the middle here, and then just fold it to the middle. I'm going to eyeball this, so I'm just going to fold one side in, and then I'll fold the other side in. And I'm just eyeballing it. The directions do tell you, draw a line down the middle. If you actually have any of those binding tools, you can use one of those as well. So I'm just, roughly folding it to the middle. It's not going to matter because I'm going to place it on my vinyl piece. And when I place it on that, I am going to place fold line to fold line. But in the directions, like I said, I tell you to draw a line down the middle. Okay. The next thing I did is on the inside here is I actually put, like I said, a piece of DLH. You can put Decoville Light, just something to make it a little bit firmer and so it doesn't stretch. Sometimes straps can stretch over time. And I'm just going to lay that right down there in the middle. And it will be shorter on the ends here. And that's because these ends are going to get sewn into our channel piece. And I don't want to have the bulk. So I don't want the bulk, which is why it's coming up a little bit shorter on the ends. So then we're just going to iron that. And I just fold it back in half again. And I iron it. And make sure your bumpy side or your glue side is facing towards the fabric. I don't know if you saw me just feel it, but I was making sure that it was folded towards the bumpy side. Okay, so now we have those two pieces. The next piece that we need are our vinyl pieces for our straps. So these I already pre-interfaced, so I put the strip down the middle. I'm just going to stick some double-sided tape on here, and then I'm going to fold it right in there to the middle. So I didn't interface the entire thing. I just interfaced down the middle. And I showed you yesterday on day one that there is stretch in this fabric. So interesting. So you can use all vinyl. The only thing that I would say to you is don't use, like on this bag, I don't use vinyl on the channel piece at all because I want it to be flexible. Also, make sure that you're using a vinyl that is a thinner vinyl. So this is on the thinner side. Um, there are some companies that I know sell vinyl. They are on the thinner side, and that's what you want to use. So you can definitely make this in an all vinyl bag as long as it's domestic sewing machine friendly. So that's a great, I'm glad you mentioned that, Vonna. That was really good. So next, I'm just going to add some, like I said, some double-sided tape to this. Um, I'm using 1/8. We'll see how we do with the 1/8. I probably need 1/4, but I'll try it with 1/8. Okay, well, let's not do that. Let's use the one that it should be. So you can use 1/8. I'm gonna use 1/4 only because I don't want to use clips. I normally use 1/8 a lot. So I'm just gonna put a piece of double-sided tape on one side. And for this, I don't need my ironing surface. You are more than welcome, Miss Varner. And then I'm gonna put another piece on the other side. And this is because you cannot iron on vinyl. And I need to fold this to the middle. And I don't want to have to put, a lot of clips. So this is why I'm using the double-sided tape. I use 1/8 inch only because it's a thinner tape. I don't need it to be permanently held down there. I just need it temporarily to be held. But I use that because when I sew, it doesn't really gum up my machine, but it's less things to worry about if you're worried about the glue aspect. So because this vinyl it has like a fleece backing, it was very easy to peel the backing off. I may regret that later on because I may go do it again and it won't work. But I just pressed it very firmly like this. It stuck to the fleece or the fabric. And then all I'm going to do is fold this to the middle. So once again, in the directions, I tell you to draw a center line. I'm going to just eyeball it here. And I did this for both straps, both of the straps. Okay, so that's one. Peel the backing off the other one. And these are going to go right next to each other. So don't try to leave a gap. They should go right next to each other. And that's because we're not going to fold this anymore. If you were going to do a double fold, like if I was just going to fold it this way and then fold it again this way, you leave a little bit of a gap so that there's some breathing. I call it breathing, but there's some space in here so it's easy to turn and it sits flat. Being that I'm going to do this accent piece, I'm going to just put it right next to each other. So they're right there. And I'm looking at my strap and I think I cut them almost the same. Yeah, I cut them exactly the same size. I was looking at it saying they're the same size. One should be smaller than the other. So I am going to trim off, I think, some of this um, in a minute because one should be smaller. I cut them the same size. But that's not an issue. And we're going to do this one. So I'll cut off about 1/8 of an inch on the fabric strap. Or I can just leave it. It doesn't matter. They'll just be exactly the same. It'll be laying on top of each other, but the fabric one should be just slightly narrower than this one. So, and I'm not going to worry about this raw edge because that's going to go into the bag itself. So it's going to be hidden within the, when I do the other piece. Okay. So we've done that. I am going to trim off about 1/8 of an inch on either side of this because I do, which will be about 1/4 of an inch, which is about right. And the reason I'm doing it on either side is because I've already put the strip in the middle. And if I cut it on one side, then I have to move that strip that's in the middle. So, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to stick this here and just cut off about 1/8. And I'll do that on both sides. And it's not, also, it's not going to really matter much when I fold it back in because I'm going to fold it under on top of this. So both seams will be hidden under there. So the 1/8 of an inch, I don't have to worry about because there will be a gap in the middle, but that's okay. Okay. Let's not do that shortcut. So I'm going to iron this flat. It just makes it easier to do this. Remember I said you're going to see my mistakes and all. That's the good thing about a live. It's just easier to measure if it's lying flat. It kept curling in on itself. So I'm going to iron this one flat, and then I'm going to iron this one flat too. And just like that. And then I'll cut off the 1/8 of an inch and then I'll refold it. So no, not a big deal. Okay. So now it's flat and it'll be easier to cut the 1/8 of an inch. Okay. So you can see it's just a little sliver, but it made a difference when I was laying it on top for the look. So that was just me making a mistake. If you want to just leave it, if you do that and it's the same width, it's not a problem. You can leave it that way. It doesn't impact the pattern itself. So if you wanted to leave it exactly the same width, you could have done that. I'm just fixing it for anybody who's watching this video. And I don't want them to look at it and then go, but that hers was bigger and I don't know what she did because it was bigger. This way it doesn't matter. And like I said, if I take off 1/8, it's going to be actually 1/4 of an inch I'm taking off. There we go. And then I'm just gonna simply fold this, like I said, to the middle, so. Mm, okay. And I won't worry so much about, I should be able to pull it in and fold it to the middle, even though I have a little bit of a bulk there. And I am pulling it rather hard because I once again have that interfacing right there that I think I can pull that off. And I just ripped it off. If it doesn't stick, that's okay. I just need it to stick a little bit so that it will, I just need it to stick enough so that I can sew it. And there is glue already on here. So once again, it is shorter. And then I should be able to fold this to the middle. Yes, there's glue on there. My iron has like kind of like this Teflon-y coating, so things don't really stick to it. And then I'm just going to fold this right to the middle, just like that, like I did before, and I'm just going to go straight down. And then once I'm done, everything should align. So this piece should be smaller than your main strap. Yeah, Vaughn, I wasn't thinking about it either. I was like, oh, let me take a shortcut. And sometimes you just can't do those shortcutty things. You gotta iron it flat, take your measurement and do it that way. Some things you can cheat at, some things you can't. And if you're gonna do this, you really, if you heat up the interfacing again, so if you put the hot iron on it, it's easier to pull off, and that's what I would recommend you do as opposed to what I'm doing, which is just ripping it off. And that's because, and I'll show you what happened. When I ripped this off, can you see that strand of thread that's stuck there? So if I that's actually from the interface, but imagine if I had done it and my interface went all to the way to the end, I'd be fraying out the ends of my fabric. So you should really heat it up first and then peel it back because the glue is melted. So that's really what you want to do. You want to get that glue melted before you try to lift it. So you can see I took it off and it sticks back on there. No issues um, at all. And you can see that it's very, and once again, I did this because I cut this piece of the top piece too wide. So it was exactly the same size as the bottom, and that's not what I wanted. So that's why I'm doing all this fixing. Okay. Ta-da. So now that that's done, let's give me another good iron. So what you're going to do is you're going to match the center seam of your top piece with the center seam of your bottom piece, which is the vinyl. So I'm just going to put a piece of tape down the middle. This I will use a 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape because I don't want it peeking out on any of the sides in any way. Okay. And once again, this is the side where I put it together. So that's where the seam is, where I folded it in on itself. And I'm going to peel that double-sided tape off of there. And then I'm going to take the other piece here where I also folded it into the middle right here. And I'm going to place this folded side against that folded side. So I should not see any of the place where I folded it when I'm done. And if I did it right, you should be able to see a little bit of that. It's like a blackish vinyl that I'm using. That black vinyl peeking out to the side. So whatever color vinyl you use, it should peek out to the side. And I can tell when I get to the bottom here that this isn't matching. And the way that I know that is because it goes all the way out to the edge of my fabric. So I'm just going to finger press that just a little bit to hold it in place. And there you go. All right. So just going to trim this just a tad. Okay. So that's one piece. If you need to add clips, please go ahead and add clips. The tape seems to be holding, so I don't need that. And this I'm going to iron one more time because I can see it opening up on me. This is a very, seems to be a very stiff piece of Ankara fabric. So. Okay. So now we can do this other piece. And what I will be doing is I will be sewing on the fabric, the edge of the fabric, using a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to top stitch both of these pieces together. So I'm just going to add this tape right down the middle here. Remember, it's on the join, so it's on the side where it joins. Just like that. All right. And then I'm going to take this off. Just peel it right off. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the side where I'm joining and match it up so I shouldn't see any joins. If I flip this over, there should be no joints. They should be sandwiched between the two pieces of material. Okay. So now I have those. I have this piece, and this is my key fob piece. And I just want to make sure that I have all of the pieces. So I'm on page 11, where it's called Crafting the Straps. I've done that already. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the sewing machine, but I want to make sure when I sew these straps together that I leave a piece of it open over here on either end. And that's because when I attach it at the top, when I attach it here, I want to be able to, right here, I want to be able to equally distribute that seam. So when I do it, I'm going to leave about a 1/2 of an inch on the bottom of each edge. So I want to make sure that I mark this with that 1/2 an inch mark. So I'm going to get a little marking tool, make sure that it's an erasable marking tool. And I'm going to mark on both of these strap ends about a 1/2 of an inch. If you accidentally sew it to the end, don't worry about it. You could always just rip it out. I have done that. I've sewn to the end and forgot. So you can come back and rip it out. You should be able to also feel it because that interfacing stops about the same amount in. So what I mean is when I sew it, I need to separate these two right here. And I'm going to put 1/2 of it on one side and 1/2 on the other. So I separate it like that. But in order to separate it, I have to leave it open at the bottom. So I'm only going to sew from the 1/2 an inch mark here to the other side where there's a 1/2 an inch mark there. So that's why I'm doing that. And you'll see what it'll make sense when I get it all together. All right. And after this, I am going to go to the sewing machine and I will be top stitching this. I'll top stitch this and I will top stitch the key fob, this key fob that we just made as well. So once again, if you're following along, I am on page 14 of the pattern. And I'll try to remember to tell you when I'm going to the sewing machine. So anybody who doesn't like that shifting around when the camera switches, at least hopefully I'll give you a heads up and you can look away. So right now I'm going to the sewing machine. All right. So I am going to sew using a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And that's both for the key fob and for my strap. I'll start with my strap. I do have that mark right here. I am going to be sewing on the fabric, not on the vinyl. And top stitching is normally a bigger stitch length than a regular sewing stitch. So you want to adjust it. And what I would say to you is if you're not sure, I usually use between a 4 and a 4.5 for my top stitch. If you are not sure what you like if it's going to be too wide, use a scrap piece of material, do it at 4, do it at 4.5, do it at 5, do it at 5.5. And whichever one you like is the one that you use. I hate telling, I give in the directions, I do say what to use, but that's because of my machine. Your machine may work just a tad differently, and your stitches may come out maybe a little bit closer than you like. So use what you like. Don't, like I said, what I'm telling you is a suggestion based on what I think looks good. But you should definitely use what you like. So let's do this. We're going to top stitch once again from that 1/2 inch mark on the fabric, on this fabric, not on the edge of the vinyl. I back tack. It's just a habit. So I tell people to back tack, especially because I know I'm going to be opening that up and I don't want stitches to go awry. Now you will need to cut your thread. Remember I said we're not going to the end. So you will need to cut your thread when you get to that 1/2 inch mark. And leave this portion open right here. So I know it's taped, but you can very easily open it up like that. Okay, so we want to be able to do that. We're going to sew the same way on the opposite edge, and we're going to do the same thing for our other strap as well. So you can see I have my top stitch. It's probably easier to see it in the back. And I'm going to do the same on this side. Okay, so that's one strap. Let's do the other one. Okay. Artist 11 Design Studio, welcome. So If this is your first time, welcome. What I will say to you is that the lives I do over the course of 3 days, and that gives people a chance to cut their material, watch me on the first day as I cut and I explain interfacing. And then the second day, we do the exterior, which is what we're working on now. And then tomorrow or on day 3, I will do the lining and then we'll put everything together. So I just think it's more manageable for people to sew that way rather than one big sew along. And I like to do it live because then I get to pop your name up on the screen when I see you make a comment. So welcome. Okay, that's the second strap. And then there's one more thing, which is our key fob. And the key fob, I'm actually just going to sew all the way around, only because I don't need to leave that end open. And I start with this side that's folded first, because there's nothing worse than doing this side and then that side gets out of alignment. This way, if it's a little bit out of alignment on the seam, I could always just roll it in my fingers to get it back in alignment before I sew it. So this is the same thing. It's 1/8 of an inch top stitching. And I'm just going to do it for the key fob all the way around. I will stop when I get to the end, about 1/8 of an inch from the end. So about 1/8 of an inch here. I leave my needle down. If anybody's ever tried to do something and they notice there's like a little jogging, if you rotate your hand wheel so that the needle goes up and you can see it's going in the upward position, don't take it out, just make sure it's going up. You know that it caught your bobbin thread. You can then lift your presser foot, rotate, and stitch to the other side. When you get over there, once again, you rotate your hand wheel, I should have said. Make sure it's going up. Don't take it out, then you can rotate. And that should give you a nice square, as opposed to sometimes you get that elongated stitch that goes at a diagonal, like a 45-degree angle. And that's usually because you did not get the bobbin thread. Okay, so now we've done all of those pieces, and I'm going to go back to the cutting mat. Okay, so here we are. So I have top stitched this piece. Once again, make sure you leave that opening on either side so that we can peel it back, right? This piece here is going to get a swivel hook. When we do our lining, I'll put a swivel hook, and then I'm just going to fold it in half like this with the swivel hook attached, and that's how I have the key fob. So don't lose this. I like to add clips to the things that I don't want to throw away, because as I'm cleaning up, I throw things away, and if there's no clip attached, I sometimes forget what it is. So now that we've done this, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the frame casing. So I'm going to set these aside and I'm going to work on this piece right here, that frame casing, because then I have to put my straps into it, right? So let's get those pieces. And remember, I said we need for the middle, and I lost my casings. We're going to need it for the middle piece here. And we're going to need for either end. So we need 4 of those pieces as well. So give me 1 second. Let me figure out what I did with them. I try to stay very organized. Doesn't always happen that way. So here goes the middle piece. And here goes the left and right pieces. So I actually put a extra piece here just to try to, because I left it with the clips on so it wouldn't get ruined. But you can always steam that out. So if you're following along in the pattern, I'm on page 15. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to turn down our ends on these pieces, which are the left and right pieces. And that's because I don't want any raw edges. And I'll show you over here. I don't want any raw edges, so I have to turn them under. So I'm going to get my double-sided tape. Once again, you cannot iron on vinyl. So I'm going to use my double-sided tape. And I'm going to add a piece of double-sided tape. So I want it to be a 1/2 inch fold. So I'm going to, and you can draw it with, I usually use a charcoal liner, but I draw a line that's like 1 inch. So that's 1 inch right there, right? And then I will put double-sided tape. So the pattern tells you to draw a line. Put a piece of double-sided tape, just like that. Peel that back. And then you're going to fold this edge to that line that you drew right here at the 1 inch mark. I'm just going to fold it to my ruler, just like that. And I'm going to press it. So now I have that 1/2 inch fold. Okay. And that'll stop me. Now I only need to do this on one edge of these shorter pieces, my left and right pieces. I don't need to do it on both edges. And that's because this will be here. The center piece will be here. And then I need another piece over here with a folded edge. So I only need to do it on one side. I did not interface this vinyl that I'm using for the casing because I do not want it to be stiff. I want it to be pliable so I can slide it over my frame. And the frame goes in at the very end, by the way. So we'll be working our whole bag, and then at the very end, we will slide in that frame. Okay. So let's get this done. And I'm not worried about that tape. Come back and peel it off later. Once again, you're going to draw a line for this. I'm just using the grid lines on my cutting mat because it's a dark material. And if I drew a line, I would be able to see it, but you wouldn't be able to see it. So the pattern tells you where to draw it. Okay. So once again, it's only folded on one edge. The other edge is a raw edge. Hey, Miss Arnetta from DC. What's the weather like there? We're having 80-degree weather, which is crazy in October here. But what's going on? So now I'm on page 16 of the pattern. Okay. And the next thing I want to do is I want to top stitch on these folded edges because I'm not going to be able to do that later. I'll be able to do it later on, but I just like getting it out of the way and I want them to be pretty. So I'm going to go to the sewing machine once again, and I am going to top stitch. Top stitching is the same. Like I said, this is a stitch that I said is meant to be decorative, so it should be a wider stitch length. Also, something to be aware of is usually on vinyl, you will use a wider stitch length than you would normally use anyway. And that's because you don't want to make small little perforations in your vinyl because those are places where they'll be able to rip. So you want to use a wider stitch length anyway. So if you're using like a 3, you definitely want to go up to a 4 and then maybe top stitch at a 4.5 or a 5. And I'm just going to string these along. So I'm just going to not cut the thread. I'm just going to go to the next one. I do back tack. You won't see this because this will be in the seam allowance. And you won't be able to see the back tacking is what I'm referring to. And I have one more. Okay, so I have all 4 of these done. And I'm going to go back to the cutting mat and I'm going to cut these apart. Cool in the morning. Yes. Perfect. That's perfect weather for me anyway. Um, so it's more like fall there than it is here. Here it's a little bit on the warm side. Okay. So now that we've done that, the next thing that we want to do is we want to grab one of our strap pieces. One of our strap pieces. We're going to set aside these 2 pieces, one of our center pieces, and 2 pieces that are the smaller pieces, which is the left and right piece. So now we're going to do this casing piece. So the way that I do it is, like I said, I want to make sure that I sew it on here, but when I'm done, I'm actually going to open this up and split it because I'm going to need to top stitch. So I need to mark the center, and you can do this whichever way makes you comfortable. I fold it in half and I take a small snip about 1/8 of an inch so that I can see it. So I take a little tiny snip. You can use a marking tool, but hopefully you can see that. See that little snip that I took? And that's outside of the seam allowance, so I don't worry about it. So you're not going to see it, that cut. Don't cut it so deep that when you put your seam allowance on. So then I can take this piece and I can align it to the edge here where the center is. All right, so you can mark the center here if you want as well, but I just eyeball it and I stick it on there. And I'm going to add a clip. It should be right side facing up. So your vinyl is right side facing up and your strap piece is also right side facing up. This is on page 16 of the pattern. I'm then going to create a sandwich. Now, normally what I would do is I would go to the sewing machine, I'd baste this in, I baste a lot, but I'm not going to do that in this case only because I need to open this up. And if I baste it, I'm going to have to take out those stitches. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to take one of my pieces and I'm going to place it wrong side down. So the edges should align over here. And then I'm going to clip it, reposition my clip so it's clipped back together like that. Okay. So the vinyl here, which was the centerpiece, is right side up. Your strap is right side up. And then this other shorter piece is wrong side up, right? So it's right side, wrong side. So that means that this piece is right side with your strap. So I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew that in place. Okay. And I'm just going to reposition this a little bit. And I will be back tacking this at the beginning and the end. And take your time going over that thicker spot. And also make sure that your strap is still straight. And I'm going to just resew this. My tension is off because I was doing something earlier. So I'm just going to tighten this up just a little bit. There we go. And my tension was a little bit off because I was doing something. So now, once you've had that done, when you open it up, you should see that your strap is in the middle. And I apologize, I didn't go to the sewing machine. So let's do this side because it's going to go like that. And we'll go to the sewing machine, right? So this is one part of it done. I'm going to take this, once again, match up the center. of my strap right here. Make sure you don't twist anything, right? Because that's going to be the strap. I'm then going to take this shorter piece, wrong side up, right sides together, and I'm going to clip it. And then I'm just going to go to the sewing machine. And this time I will, I promise. I'll take you with me. There we go. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I will be sewing this again for the opposite side. Okay, so now that's done. So now what you'll see is you'll see that it's sticking up. You see how your strap is sticking up there? That's how it should look. And to put the casing in or to create the channel, what we're going to end up doing is folding this in half like this. And that's how the frame is going to go in there. But before that, I want to address this seam here and I want it to lay flat because I don't want it bunching up inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold one end down. So this is the way it looks, right? And my strap is in the middle. I'm going to fold one end down. The other end I'm going to fold away. So now all I have is my strap sticking up. And this is where I said we distribute it. So I open this up and I put the fabric to one side and I put the actual strap. So there is tape in there. So that's how it's going to look. But I lay it flat. And to help me do that, I will add a piece of double-sided tape once again. I'm going to try to think which one I want to use. Do I want to use the 1/4 inch or do I want to use this one? Let's use the 1/4 inch. And I'm just going to stick a piece right next to the seam. And we're going to do that on both sides. And then we're going to top stitch on either side to hold that in place. Now, the tricky part is going to be to make sure you get this strap pieces that they're spread open. So that'll be the tricky part when you're sewing, but you just want to get it flat. And that's, like I said, that's because when you stick the tubular frame in there, you don't want it to really kind of get caught. If I just left that lump in there, I don't want it to get really caught. And I want it to be flat. So I'm going to peel this tape off of the back of one side. I'm going to press this down. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. And I'm going to press it down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open this up here. And when you get to the sewing machine, you'll be able to hold it in place. You can add a piece of double-sided tape, a little piece right here and on the other side. But when you get to the sewing machine, if you just hold it open and flip it upside down, it holds it down. So you don't have to worry about it because it's sitting down. And then when you sew the other side, you do the same thing. So I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to prepare this so when I go to the sewing machine, I can just top stitch. Now I am using my regular foot because this is such a thin vinyl. I will say to you, if you have something thicker and it's stickier, you can feel whether your vinyl is sticky. Sometimes it's humidity where you live, and sometimes it's just sticky. You would use a Teflon foot or your walking foot. So I'm giving that a good press. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, at the sewing machine, I'm going to top stitch. And I do it at 1/4 inch. So I'm going to top stitch along this edge, and then I'm going to flip this inside, and that'll be trickier, and I'm going to top stitch in there. So let's go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to do it for both sides. Okay. So this is where I said, one second. This is where I said I'm gonna open this up, and then I'm going to flip it so it's down flat on my bed. So once I do that, then I know that it's under there and it's tucked under and it's open. I'm gonna make this as flat as I can, and I'm going to sew. Now, it will catch your fabric over here, and on the other side, you'll catch the vinyl. My sewing foot is actually a quarter of an inch, so I'm doing a quarter of an inch top stitching to hold that down. So that's one side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same for the other side. So this is the part that will be tricky. So you're going to fold your strap out of the way this way. Make sure this piece here is folded downward under. So that's just a vinyl piece. And you're going to sew that vinyl piece on the other side. And I apologize. I think there's something going on with my, it's my tension. And I just want to fix that real quick. So sometimes it's just a matter of removing my bobbin. Sometimes it's a little bit more, but okay. All right. All right. Here we go. Okay. So let's do this again. So much better. Okay. And then we're going to do the other side as well. So once again, we're going to open this up, lay it flat. We're going to stitch along that edge. Get rid of some of these threads. Okay. And it's not liking me. Not liking me tonight, my machine. Okay. And then we're going to do this again. So you can see how that's caught in there. We're going to do this, flip the strap in the other direction, and then do the same on the other side. And we'll lock in that piece of vinyl. Okay. And we're done. So we're not done, but we're done with that portion of it. I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup here of the actual piece. So I'm going to just clean up a little bit of my threads here. And you should have your strap. So I'm going to leave that with you to complete for tomorrow, because I've shown you how to do this. I don't think you want to see me bore you with that strap, but that's how you construct the strap piece of it. And you're going to do the same because you still have this piece, this center piece, and these two pieces as well. And you should have one more strap. So your additional strap will then get constructed the same way this one is, and you can see how it's sitting up like that. And it's okay. So when I put on the casing, it will sit up just like that. All right, so that was page 17 for anybody who's following along. And the next thing you would do is, once you have this completed, you would in fact fold this in half, match your seams over here, and clip them in place. Match your seam here and clip it in place. And then what I have you do is I have you base stitch that together on the sewing machine. So you're going to base stitch this whole thing at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And that's because by base stitching it, it makes it easier to attach to your front and or your back. All right, so that's going to be what it is. And then we would base stitch this going straight across. All right, when you're done, you should have two. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is, let me take this, base stitch this one so I can show you the next step. And the base stitching, I do use a longer stitch length. I have to use a longer stitch length on my sewing machine to do that. This thing is really springy. All right, I'm going to swap this out because it's not. And I'm going to use my Teflon foot for this part of it. And this is actually an edge foot, but it is 1/8 of an inch edge foot. So I haven't used this vinyl before. And it is very, very soft. So it's very, very grippy. I usually use one that's a little bit thicker. The one that came in the box is actually thicker than this one. So it's not as soft as this one, and it's really nice. And it doesn't have a fleece back. It has a fabric back. Okay. So hopefully the Teflon foot will help. All right, I got it. I have another issue. That is my needle. I think by the time I'm done, I would have cleaned my sewing machine, replaced my bobbin, switched out my foot. I would have done all the things that I needed to do. There we go. Okay. One more time. Let's see. Beautiful. Okay. So on a roll. And I try not to pull or stretch on this fabric because um, there is no interfacing, so I try not to pull it or stretch it. Okay. All right, so that's top stitched. It's all top stitched here. And okay, hopefully you guys can still hear me. It's all top stitched, and that's because I want to attach it to my front and my back. So that is done. Vonna says that looks familiar. Shh, Vonna, no telling my secrets. No telling my secrets. It is the vinyl that I used for my prototype for the Kayla bag in the Bag of the Month Club. So that was the prototype vinyl that I used. So the next thing we're going to do is we're on page 19, and we're going to get our exterior, and I'm going to say front. It's either front or back. They're the same. They're exactly the same. So whichever piece you have, if you have a specific front or back, like I mentioned to you, this is going to be my front. So I'm going to use my exterior front piece. And I want to fold this in half, just like that. And I'm going to snip it here. And I'm going to mark it here as well. And I mark the center. Oops, I'm off camera. There you go. And pinky waving. You're so funny. You ladies are so funny. Okay. So I marked the center on this. So what I want to do is I want to take this piece, which is the one that I completed, and you'll do this to the front and the back. If you fold it in half this way, you can mark the center here as well. And I'm going to take a small snip here. And I'm going to align it with the other, with the center on my front at the top. So I'm going to align the center marks and I'm going to clip it in place. Just like that. And then I'm just going to go around and around. Just like that. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. It should finish about at that V mark right there. So I'm going to do the same over here. And that's where you have to make sure that when you're clipping it, you're actually curving your vinyl piece around the curve, because the top of this does have a little bit of a curve right here. So you want to curve it around that piece, just like that. Okay. So when you're done, it'll look like that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to baste that once again. So once you've basted it in, this part here will flip up when we attach the lining, just to show you. And that's what it'll look like, right? And then we'll put the piece in here for our tubing, our our frame, our tubular frame. All right, so then you're going to baste that in place. So I will go to the sewing machine and I will do that. Once again, my basting stitch is 1/8 of an inch along the edge there, and I want to make sure that it stays that way. Keeping it out of my seam allowance. And take your time once again doing this. It's the longest stitch length on my machine that I'm using, so I just turned it to whatever the longest one is. Mine happens to be a 6, and I will baste this in. Okay. So let's go back to the cutting mat. You can see that I've basted it in, and once again, if I flip this up, that's the way it's going to look, right? And then when I stick the frame in, it'll be totally, it'll get more of a shape. So when I stick this in, imagine this piece going over there, and then this is going to curve like that. So it'll get more of a shape. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, so you're going to do this for the back as well. This is my front. You're going to do the same thing for the back. The next thing I want to do is I want to get my bottom piece. So I'm going to grab that piece and I'm going to put it down here. So it's actually it comes together pretty quickly. I know that I'm explaining a lot, but it does come together very quickly. So I keep losing pieces. I want you to know my space is very small, so I don't know how I keep losing pieces because this room is only, I think, 11 by 17. So let's take a moment. All right. So you should have the bottom. These are my linings. This is this. This is this. Okay. Give me 1 second. Please hold. And I just had it because I showed you guys all the pieces. So I know that I had it. All right, so there's more than one way to skin a cat here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look for it 2 seconds and then, take a break. Okay. So this is going to be the bottom piece. Like I mentioned, I did interface it and I did put the Decoville light. So I've already put the center mark, and I told you this at the beginning that I put an actual center mark to mark the center. And I took a snip just a few minutes ago of this as well. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to align that center mark with that mark. Now I will say to you, on the pattern piece itself for the bottom, there are these V shapes, and those V shapes are also meant to help you with placement. So these V shapes right here at the bottom, right? So when you're placing this piece, that's to help you place the piece on the bottom. I just marked the center, but if you read the directions, it'll tell you, to match those up. So I'm going to put this right side up, my front, and this wrong side down. So they're right sides together, and I'm going to match those centers. And then I normally clip from the center and I clip out to the ends. Now this I will put on permanently because I'm not basting it in. I want it to be on there. And when it's done, it will be on there just like that. And you would do the same with the back piece when you're done. So you would do another piece like this. You would do the back piece, right? Then you would attach the back piece to this once it's done. So I'm attaching this because I'm saying that I did my back as well, right? So then after you've done both of these exterior pieces, you then attach this bottom piece. And that is on page 20. And I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew that in. So let's see how I do with this edge foot here. So I won't take it off. I will just sew with it. And you will sew from end to end. Oh, changing my stitch length back down. Okay. So now I've sewn that on. And then the next step after you've sewn that on is going to be you would sew the back piece on, right? So you do your little interfacing with your handle, and then you take your back piece and you would sew that on as well. So it will look like this once you sew it. You'll then take the back piece that's completed, you'll put it on here, center it, clip it, and you'll sew that as well. Once you have those pieces together, you will then sew these side seams on both the left and the right. And then what you will do, and I'll just do it with half, is you will open it up and you will fit this piece right in here. Okay. Now the little pieces that were snipped on here would be where you start and stop on your base, right? So when I did this, I'm just going to move that up right here. Don't use my seam ripper too often. But I'm just going to rip this out a little bit just to show you. I'll leave it at one side, I'll leave as is, and this side I'll rip it out to show you. So that's the start and stop. And just give me 1 second. I really back tacked this in. So I'll show you the difference. Okay. There we go. So this side I've opened up and the other side I left as is. Right? So this side, I'll show you, I've opened up. And this side I've sewn to the edge. Let me show you the difference when I'm putting the base. If I stop here where it's open, I can then gently curve this base around. Can you see that? I can get like a point here and then I can curve it just like that because this side stops there. When it's sewn in and I try to curve it, I don't know if you can see that little pucker in the corner, that gives you that pucker. But if it wasn't sewn down and you started it stopped where the V was, what would happen is you could actually take your piece I'm just going to add a clip here. There would be a seam on the side, right? So you'd match the seam with the center, just like that. And you can see how that side lays a lot smoother. So hopefully you can see that. Whereas this side, because it's stitched down, it would pull in. Okay, so those lines that are on here, and over here are your start and stopping for your stitching. So I hope that makes sense. So I will come back tomorrow. I've gotten you through the exterior. And tomorrow we'll come back, we'll do the lining, which will be easy because there's not as much vinyl. You're going to do your back portion the same way, right? So you're going to take the 3 pieces for this, right? So you're going to take your left, center, right, those 3 pieces, right? We've already done the top stitching. You're then going to take your strap that you have, your extra strap. You're going to lay it on your centerpiece, right side up and centered along that edge. Your right piece, you're going to take and put it wrong side up or right sides together with your strap. And you're going to sew this right across here. Once you've done that, you're going to then do the same on this other side, right, with this second piece. And then what you're going to do is you're going to open this up, lay it flat, and you will be top stitching on this side and this side. And then once you've done this side, you'll do the same level of top stitching on both sides. And then you will have the channel portion, which is this piece here, completed. You're then going to attach that channel portion to your back. You'll attach your back to the base, centered. Make sure that you start and stop where your marks are here on your pattern. Once you have the base attached to the front and the back, you can then sew the side seams and you can finish off your base. So that's how you're going to construct the back. I won't keep you with repetitive, the exterior. That's how you're going to construct the exterior. I won't keep you with repetitive, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. It's the same thing. Once you've done this and you've attached the bottom, you're then going to go to the back, do the same thing. So you're going to do both of your channels, attach them to your front and your back, attach your base along the bottom piece over here, starting and stopping. Once you get the front and the back attached, you're then going to sew your side seams. Once your side seams are sewn, you can then come back, fit your side around this curved edge. And when you're done with that, you will end up with your exterior of your bag completed. All right, so you would have completed the exterior. So you would have done the channel without the frame in it, of course. You would have added the channel, the front, the back, and the bottom. All right, and our straps are all done because I sat and did the straps with you. So I hope that makes sense. For tomorrow, or day 3, when we construct the lining pieces, the pieces that you will need will be your lining. There is a pocket overlay piece that you will need as well, and that's for a zipper. So you'll need your zipper. You will need 4 pieces for your, now this is both for the lining and the false bottom. I'm making my lining bottom the same as my exterior, so you'll need the lining bottom piece, right? So my lining is going to look like that. And then you will also need 2 pieces of fabric, one for your internal zipper, and the other one will be for the slip pocket. And we will also finally be attaching that little key fob that we did tonight as well. So that's for tomorrow. So tomorrow will be a little bit longer because we have a couple more pieces to go together. I will be completing the entire bag tomorrow. So I'm not going to, by the end of tomorrow, I would have completed my bag. So if you sewed along with me, for day 1, day 2, and tomorrow, I'm going to do the whole lining step by step, but at the end of it, you will have a completed bag. So it will be a longer evening tomorrow. So I just want to thank you all so much for joining me tonight for the sew along. If you have any questions, I really appreciated the interaction and people talking, whether you were talking to me or talking to somebody else. Once again, thank you, Artist 11 Design Studio. Thank you so much for joining me tonight and being your first night. I hope that you will come back again tomorrow. And if not, that you'll look at this project on replay because it will be up on YouTube. And if you're part of the Facebook group, I'm also broadcasting it within the Facebook group itself, which is Sew Your Bag. You can find this pattern in my shop, sewyourbag.com. And I'm excited to finish my bag because it goes with my dress. So I'm really excited to finish this bag. And I hope you're excited to see me finish it. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll speak again tomorrow.